Well, as Edo State prepares for its governorship election, political parties are leaving no stone unturned in their efforts to secure votes. The race is shaping up to be a three-way contest with the ruling People's or the governing People's Democratic Party in the state, the All Progressives Congress, as well as the Labour Party, all vying for control of Osadebe Avenue. Now, despite being the underdog, the Labour Party is confident it can pull off a surprise victory. The party has built its campaign around promises of economic reform, youth empowerment, and a new direction for Edo State. Well, its candidate believes that growing frustration with the major parties will work in their favor. The Labour Party's chances. I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Moses Paul. He's a member of the Labour Party's Obidient movement. He's also been part of Olumide Akpata's campaign train. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Time tonight.
Thank you.
So I understand you just returned from Edo State?
Absolutely.
What has the experience been like campaigning ahead of this election?
I'm actually thrilled, to see the level of enthusiasm that is on the ground, by the Obidient movement in support of our guy, like we say, your guy, my guy, Olumide Akpata. And the momentum is quite very high across the streets in the all over Edo State. So it's quite really very encouraging. And even though, Edo State is primed to be maybe one of the three in terms of obedientness, if there's a word like that in the country. And so on one part is no surprise, but I mean, for a party that is an emerging party is quite enormous, to say the least.
I'm glad that you mentioned the obedientness of it, because that brings me to my next question.
Okay.
Edo State historically has been a two-horse race between usually before the ACN became the APC and then PDP.
Yeah.
But that changed in 2023 with the presidential election.
That's right.
We saw the OB factor and the Obidient movement change that landscape. In fact,
right.
he won overwhelmingly the votes in that state in the presidential election with over 50% of the vote. So is it going to be much of the Obidient and the OB factor than the Olumide Akpata, your guy factor in this election?
It kind of both, because, I'm quite close to him, and he took the bull by the horn, He's moved into every cranny of the state. But yes, you can't overemphasize the pull of the weight of the OB factor. He's actually domineering in every facet. And of course, to have a person like Peter Obi on the street every day there, it's like a breaking of the dam, if you would say, for lack of a better word. So it's a combination of both. And Olumide is, advertently and obedient, in that case. So it's a tight one, and it brings to bear, the evolution, like you say, from the 2023 general election. The landscape of politics in Nigeria, is completely, the narrative, the tapestry is changed, with what happened in 2023 with the OB crazy factor. And that's what we're seeing on ground, really in Edo State. So it's a change of status quo.
But they say, all politics is local. And whilst the OB factor played out in the presidential election, some would say this is a total different ball game when it comes to the state election in Edo State. And interestingly, the three major contenders are seen as newbies into politics. Olumide Akpata, coming from his legal background, NBA chairman. Aswa Igodalo of the PDP hasn't been voted to office before, same as the APC candidate, although he won election to the Senate in 2023. So they're all seen as newbies, really. Given that politics is local, do you think Mr. Akpata can pull his own weight truly? And how important is it for Labour Party to win Edo State? Because some would say 2023 presidential election was a fluke. Can you have a second state apart from Abia State?
There is no theatrics to this. I've been on ground for many days, and quite sincerely and honestly, the commitment, the dedication, the passion, the raw energy of Olumide Akpata is very intimidating. It's almost presidential. You move from the mosque to the church to the classrooms. The children are singing, Olumide Akpata, our guy. I mean, without any theatrics, like I say. And so he's already...
But those children won't vote.
I understand that, I mean, but I can tell you, like I said, I mean, the obedientness of the state. I mean, the incumbent governor said all his household, you know, on national TV, that they're all obedient, and he had to join them because he couldn't beat them. That's the status quo. That's the story on ground, you know. And I can tell you, for somebody who just returned yesterday, and I'm going back again tomorrow, because we're not even leaving any stone unturned. We're ensuring that we're locking up every space. So I can tell you that, short of saying that if free, fair, credible election is allowed, Olumide is already there.
Okay, that's something I've heard Mr. Akpata himself say, that if the elections were free, fair, and credible or transparent, he did say at that interview that the APC candidates would not win, but you are saying generally now. And I wanted to ask you, based on what you've just said, what are the concerns around this election being fair, transparent, and credible for your party?
I mean, I think it's the general status quo, sadly, for our country, you know, where you really you can see, you know, and we understand the stakes, you know. The 2020 general elections, I mean, people were burnt in Kanu, people were shot in River State, you know. In Lagos, for example, people were stoned and beaten out of polling booths for not wanting to vote for a particular party. I mean, that's the story and the narrative in our country. Though sad, we're hoping, and this is the fear, you know. Again, can we go beyond the glitches, you know, of the IREV and the instruments of elections? These are palpable. These are realistic fears that are on ground, and also understanding that we're not incumbent, you know, and we don't hold the center, you know. So does it really matter if you have the popular vote? These are some of the fears, you know, that are there, you know, and they are real. And we're hoping and praying that the humanness of who we are as a people, you know, would take center stage in our country, where people would understand that at the end of the day, until we have values for what is required to allow for free and fair. So this is a fear, and it's real, you know. Okay,
so I mean, we wish your candidate the very best, but should he not emerge Edo State governor, would he congratulate and will he accept the results first, and would he congratulate the winner? Is that a conversation you've had with him? I know it might not be fair to ask you that because you are not him, but you're close to him.
I don't need to ask him. I understand what epitomizes the obedient movement and the nature of what serves us. And it has to, it's critical on value. You know, you see that with, you know, epitomizing the character of Mr. Peter Obi, who is in every facet of the word, you know, a very decent, democratic, you know, human being. And so I don't need to have asked, you know, Mr. Olumide Akpata, but we hold to that high standard, because what we're looking for is not just cycles of election. You know, for political parties, it's about the loot, the winning of the cycles of election. For the obedient movement, it's about a new Nigeria. So it's not just about winning an election. It's about ensuring that the values that children and generations that will come, you know, would see. So, you know the answer to that, if that is...
Well, I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking. And if you say, I mean, he epitomizes Mr. Peter Obi, we also saw what played out after the general election. There was no acceptance of results, and we didn't see much of a congratulation if it eventually even came. And that's why I'm asking, would Mr. Akpata do that?
I mean, we shouldn't congratulate evil. We shouldn't sign up with injustice. We shouldn't allow for the things that are not good for our country. But we're not going to go in the way of anarchy. That's one thing you will never get from us.
That's reassuring to hear, with the temperature rising in Edo State ahead of this election. So elections are about numbers. let's come back to the reality of the numbers and the winnings. There are suggestions that elections will be largely shaped by zonal dynamics. You do know Edo State, the 3 senatorial districts and the history behind them. The unwritten gentleman agreement of zoning this time around seems to favor the central, and 2 of the other candidates are from that zone. Mr. Akpata is not from that zone. He's from the zone which the outgoing governor is from. Some say that may work against him, even though that zone has or has usually given the highest votes during elections. How are you working the numbers?
I mean, for the numbers are there. If you look at the incumbent came in with about what? About 300,000 plus, as against a total registered number of about 1.9 million. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look at that status quo, from our back room, we already have we can triple that number, you know, given what we already have with the work we have done, you know. So it's a given already if you're going by data, you know, across board. So we have that. And again, Olumide's vice is from the north. You also know that the center is actually the smallest in terms of zoning. But again, I do, you know, I see what you're saying, but mm-hmm. competence and character, you know, is what we consider good governance here. And so we're picking the tabs on all sides. And
competence and good governance will give you the numbers you need in this election, even though the 2 running mates of the other 2 candidates are also from his region. So the vote does look split ahead of this election.
Like I said, go to Edo State. I'm back there tomorrow.
Great.
The market speaks for itself.
Fingers crossed.
The streets speaks for themselves. The people are there. Actually, Edo State is tired of the old order. They're yearning for something new. Mm-hmm. Olumide is our guy, really.
Great.